Welcome back to this amazing conversation with Richard Howe, the Managing Director of ALP, or Africa Logistics Properties Limited. And we are going to delve into a conversation of the two major projects that they've already started, and some of it is almost complete, and see how the experience has been. Richard.
Hi.
Let's start with ALP, Nairobi North.
Nairobi North, yes.
Nairobi North. Where is that, by the way?
Well, ALP North. So it's not the most imaginative name. It's true, but it sort of helps you understand where it is. So, unsurprisingly, it's to the north of Nairobi.
Yes.
And it's on the Tatu City.
Tatu City
development. So Tatu City, for those who haven't heard of it, is a very ambitious scheme by Rendeavour to build a sort of orbital town to the north of Nairobi, consisting largely of residential stuff, but also some shopping, commercial, and importantly from our perspective, an industrial zone as well.
Yeah.
So a complete mini city to the north of Nairobi, not far from the Thika superhighway, which gives it very good communications into town, which for us obviously is very important. And we were, once the company was set up and funded, we were very keen to find land that we could move on quickly.
Yeah.
And it's an unfortunate feature of the Nairobi real estate scene that actually acquiring land and getting started on it can actually be quite a risky and a very drawn out process. So a master plan developer like Rendeavour at Tatu City serves a very useful purpose for us, because they will sell you a piece of land which is ready to build on, and more importantly is serviced. So they take the responsibility to bring the road to your door, the electricity, the water, the sewage, the internet. All of that is brought to the boundary of your site within your land transaction.
Yeah.
And you know that it's a location that is receiving investment, and that you have like-minded people around you, and a professional management of that, all of which is true of Tatu. So in our respect, yes, you're paying a little bit more for the land. If you went out far down the Thika superhighway and found yourself a field, you would probably buy it more cheaply than the land that you buy in Tatu City. But it's a risk management point, and we wanted to be able to get on and build our buildings quickly. So that's why we bought what we call service land. Speed is important.
Yeah.
So we were the second person to build a building up. I think Dorman's Coffee was the first people to build at Tatu, but we were like the second. So at the same time that they were building the roads, we were building our warehouses. So we started up there, I think in May 2017, like 2 months after our initial equity raise. And we started in two buildings, one 15,000 square meters each, giving us a total of 30,000 square meters. And we were very fortunate that we signed a pre-lease on one of those buildings with a company called Freight Forwarders, who took one building. And we also signed Freight Forwarders, part of a big family group here, but they were new to contract logistics, which is what they wanted to do in that building.
Yeah.
And another company, new startup company called Copier, took a large chunk of the second building. So we knew those people would occupy it as soon as we finished it, and indeed we had promised them that we would finish it in September. Well, the first building is fully occupied. Copier took 4,000 square meters out of the 15,000 square meters in the second building.
Yes.
So then we still had some space to let once the buildings were complete.
Yeah.
So that obviously gave us great enthusiasm, but it also gave us a deadline. So we were very keen to get them finished. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we told
always
them
exciting for development.
Absolutely. So and we promised we would get those buildings finished in October 18, and luckily we did. So that was good. Okay. And Tatu City did everything they said they were going to do, in the roads and the electricity, the internet was all there. So those businesses moved in and started operating very quickly. So that was good. And that gave us the confidence to start the last building there, which is the third building, slightly bigger. It's 20,000 square meters.
Still the same space?
Still the same space, same land plot. So the land plot is then full.
What was the size of the land plot?
I think it was 22 acres, something
22
like that.
22 acres?
Yeah, yeah. So those three buildings are 50,000 square meters. and they fill that land plot. It's a very efficient land plot. It's nice and square.
So 15, 15, 20.
And 20, yeah. And we finished that building in, I think it was May of last year.
Yeah.
And we have let 12,000 of that 20,000 to Twiga. And in the meantime, we have let another 5,000 square meters of the second building. So we still have a little bit of space left in the second building and 8,000 square meters left in the third building.
So something in the range of 70,
75%
75%
to 80% left.
Yeah. I mean, that's really good.
It is good. Yeah, no, we're pleased.
That's really, really good.
I think if you're bringing a new product to a market like this, you've got to accept that there's a certain amount of education and explaining to be done to get people to adopt those products. But I think we're very pleased with that result.
Yeah. I mean, what did you do different to get it pre-let? It's an area that many developers take a huge risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said, I mean, I just think there's a good fundamental business opportunity. I mean, I think in fairness to the management and staff of those businesses, freight forwarders and copiers, they understood how those buildings would drive their businesses.
Yeah.
Freight forwarders has very experienced third-party logistics guys in it. They know and understand what those buildings do for that type of business. So they had no hesitation in signing up to it.
Yeah.
Copier is an e-commerce business, an interesting model, but again, it's run by people who understand supply chain, understand logistics, and therefore understand how these buildings fit into that.
Yeah.
And as I think I've touched on before, these buildings aren't new to East Africa, but they're not new to other emerging markets, and they're not new to developing economies. So it's a proven technology as part of a proven supply chain about how these things are organised. So in that respect, they're not taking an enormous risk because they know that those things have worked elsewhere. There's no reason why they shouldn't work here as well.
Yeah. Was there any particular reason why you phased the project into three phases?
Just the way it fitted on the land. And I mean, I think one of the beauties of managing a warehouse project is that the build time is not very long. So, once you've established the parameter and you've got service land, the development period of building is about a year. So you can manage your speculative capital, which as a developer you shouldn't take an unnecessary risk. So it's relatively painless to take it in phases. And in any case, unless the site is very long and thin, you have to break the site up and do different boxes.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And then now we have ALP
West.
Nairobi West.
Yes.
Yeah, from
absolutely.
north to west.
Yes, absolutely. So again, unsurprisingly, that is to the west. This is a cracking site. I love this as a location.
Yeah.
It's on a scheme called Tatu City, which again is a master planning scheme. Big as Tatu City, but again, it's a mixture of industrial and mostly residential.
You're biased towards master plan development.
Well, for us, for all the reasons we've talked about it,
it
does help.
Yeah. Speed.
In fairness, I think Endeavour and Tatu City have spent a long time putting together those schemes. I think, obviously they seek to make a reward out of doing that by adding considerably to the value of the land when they come to sell it to the likes of us. But for us, what we really want to do is get on and build a good product and meet the demand that we think is there. We don't want to wait 3 years while we...
It's a plug and play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for us, in terms of just risk management, that's a very appealing proposition because a lot of the risk of development is taken away from you. Someone's been there, checked the title, got you the roads and so on and so forth. So all of those things are in place for you. So in terms of risk management, it's an excellent proposition for us.
Yeah, especially for a new entrant.
Yeah, also true.
So back to ALP Nairobi West.
Yeah. So we've taken 49 acres there, which is about half of the industrial land.
49 acres.
Yeah. Which is about half the industrial space at Tatu City.
Wow.
And if you were to build all that out, that would give you about 100,000 square meters of warehouse space.
That's huge.
It is, and we won't be doing it all at once for the reasons that I expressed earlier.
This is more than five times of the North project.
No, the North project was 50,000 square meters, so this is double the size of it.
Oh, double the size.
Double the size.
In terms of land.
Oh, in terms of land, yeah,
In
terms of land, it's a fair old chunk of land, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's again sticking to those rules of basically putting on about 50% coverage for all the reasons we've talked about in terms of that's important to get the maneuverability, the accessibility. These things are very important for those buildings. But it sits right next to the A104 or the Naivasha Road, as people call it, which is currently, as you know, being upgraded all the way from James Gashira Junction all the way out of town, which obviously once that's completed adds terrific value to the location, because then you can dive straight into the heart of Nairobi, or you can take the junction round the southern bypass or the newly refurbished road round to the north. So it gives you great accessibility around the sides of Nairobi or straight into the centre of town. So as a logistics location serving Nairobi, we think it's unquestionably the best location, without any shadow of a doubt.
What was the big idea behind this second project?
Well, again, I think it's about placing logistics facilities on major roads, giving you good access to the places that want to be. And I mean, I think we've talked about the access into Nairobi from that side. And I mean, if you're a retailer looking for a logistics operation, the reality is that most of the retail in Nairobi is focused on the western side of the city rather than the eastern side of the city. But equally, if you do want to get, if your key location is delivering stuff to the airport, the orbital network, the road network is complete on the southern side. So actually going from Tbilisi to the airport looks a long way when you look at the map, but when you actually drive it, it doesn't take very long. And that's the important thing for a logistics operator. It's not about the kilometres, it's about the time. So that's important. But it's also very well connected, of course, with the fastest growing part of Kenya, which is the western cities in Kenya. So if you're looking to shift your product out to Nakuru or Kisumu or something, you're going to go that way. So having access to that road, which takes you straight off to Naivasha and beyond, is also an excellent feature of the site, I think.
So you've tapped into Thika Road, and you've also tapped into Nairobi Nakuru Road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are major
and
roads.
Again, this isn't rocket science. That's what you do with logistics buildings like this. You find good, strong distribution roads.
Do I see like you're sort of targeting smaller scale clients or something like that?
Yeah, no, that's right. So I think when you're faced with a site the size that can accommodate 100,000 square meters, you can't just say you're going to do the same thing for all of it. So I think one of the things that we learned from Tatu was that we tried to make the buildings as flexible as possible so that you can divide them up into nice small sections. So if you look at our buildings in Tatu, you can, yes, they're very big boxes, but you can subdivide them down as small as lets of 2,000. So we have a tenant in the second building, for instance, who only occupies 2,000 square meters. But even so, that's 2,000 square meters is too big for some SMEs. So on our initial building release on Tbilisi, we've decided to do what we call incubator units in a courtyard arrangement, so that the buildings are about 2,500 square meters, but they can be subdivided down as little as 500 square meters if that's what you want. And you don't get all the features of the big buildings, but you get a lot of them. And importantly, you get the good access rights, and you get proper loading equipment, like those sorts of things. But that means that we are being able to pitch our buildings to a much wider audience than if you just stick to the high bay product.
I see. So just increase the universe of your clientele.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the next building we build there will be very similar to the ones that we've built in Tatu in terms of high bay, because I do think that's the core product which delivers a lot of the things. But it's important to be able to sort of widen out the demand a bit.
So the one at Tatu is more institutional targeting.
It's targeted at businesses that need at least 2,000 square meters of high bay space, and that actually translates into quite a lot of pallets. So the courtyard units, as we call them at Tbilisi, are focused at businesses that don't need nearly as much as that.
But why do retailers like Carrefour go to?
Well, I mean, retailers.
These are big retailers. So
yes.
I can only imagine the demand for warehousing could be quite enormous.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things you see as an economy like Kenya develops is what I call consolidation in the retail business.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that the retail space gets increasingly dominated by large chains. Now, Carrefour is an excellent example of a grocer. There are other ones, there are Tuskies and so on and so forth, and established people here. But also, if you look at clothes chains and other sorts of retail operations as well, you tend to get more dominance of chains rather than individual family stores.
Yeah.
And once you get those sort of businesses definitely drive demand for warehousing because they buy enough stock and they buy the stock in sufficient quantities that they need proper distribution and proper logistics to run their businesses. So I think a lot of retailers, both in the food space and in other retailings, will get to the point where they do need to run a distribution centre. In your early days, you can run those sort of businesses out of what we call back of store distribution, but you get to a stage where the business reaches a certain critical mass, and each retail chain has its own particular point where that happens, where you do need to have a proper distribution centre.
I see. I mean, let's talk about your construction experience, because probably that's what you've had most of the since 2017.
True.
What would you comment on this? Because it's we're not a very organized industry when it comes to construction, especially when it's large scale.
Yeah, I think in Kenya, in many ways, you do find a very good selection of professionals. So there's good architects, there's good QSs, there's good engineers. Which was something that I struggled with in my previous jobs, where those professionals weren't necessarily. Yeah, in Russia, because they came from that Soviet system, they didn't have that what I call the commercial framework of development there. So they had technical institutes, but they didn't have. Certainly initially, I mean they do now.
So the human resource here is good.
Human resource is good.
Yeah.
What you perhaps don't have is that real depth of choice in terms of contractors, simply because perhaps the market is a lot smaller here.
Yeah.
So you need to choose your contractor very carefully, and we spend a lot of time choosing our contractor for Tatu.
Who was your contractor?
It's a company called Mahesh & Tirth, not one of the biggest contractors, but contractors for me come in two different baskets.
Yeah.
There are contractors who bring you a problem, and there are contractors who bring you a problem and a solution. Mahesh & Tirth fall into the second half of that. Yeah, and I've worked with a lot of contractors in my life who I take what I call the claims management route of contracting. So their view is to try and find a problem and make it something into a claim, which can then increase the value of their contract. And then there are contractors who work with you. They're happy to make money on it, but they want to make their money by producing your building on time for you. So they are problem solvers, not problem finders. And the difference for me is huge in terms of what the contractors do for you.
So the ALP Nairobi North, it's so far 8,000 square meters?
Nairobi, this is west. Yes.
Sorry, west.
No, it's the first buildings will be complete in October.
In October this year?
In October this year.
And it will be 8,000 square
8,000 square meters.
Okay. Already broken ground?
Oh yes. No, the steel frames are rising at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's quite interesting. And has the first one, the ALP Nairobi North, has it broken even?
Yeah. No. I mean, I think with that level of occupancy, then you've got to the point where you're making a reasonable return. I mean, we have every we're feeling confident this year in terms of the people that we're talking to, that the space that's still vacant there will be filled relatively quickly. We have some strong interest in those spaces, and I think getting to the point where a much wider proportion of the business community here understand why those buildings work. And therefore I think we're getting a bit more traction in terms of take-up.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've seen you constantly describe it as Class A. And it's a term that can be quite vague because it's somehow used carelessly, but what does it mean to you?
Yeah, Class A, as I said, isn't a hard and fast definition, but I mean I think there are certain key things that you can expect. If you say to someone it's a Class A warehouse, if they work in logistics, there's certain things that they will expect to find. They'll expect it to use modern loading docks. They'll expect the floor to be raised above the yard so that the loading docks work, so that you can use mechanical handling equipment to load and unload trucks very quickly. They will expect there to be one dock per 1,000 square meters of space. They'll expect the space to be at least 10 meters high out of 12. They'll expect there to be a modern what we call a modern FM2 floor. FM2 is a floor standard about flatness and hardness, which means that you can run modern logistics, very high racking, and modern mechanical handling equipment in that building properly. They'll expect it to be able to support a warehouse management software, so it's not just about the physical side of these systems. There's a lot of IT that goes in those buildings, so that not only the person running the warehouse knows where his stock is, if he's allowed his client to look into his IT systems. So if you've gone to someone like freight forwarders, for instance, who are a third-party logistics company, they will offer the capability to their clients to be able to look into their system so that they can actually see how much stock and where it is in the warehouse. So those sort of things are all important in defining a Class A warehouse. I mean, there are other things like energy standards, modern firefighting systems. But certainly our objective in building those first buildings at Tatu was that if you'd worked in Unilever or Procter & Gamble and you'd worked in their logistics operations in Tokyo or New York or New Delhi, and you'd seen those buildings, when you came and you looked at our building, you would look at it and think, it's the same.
Is it? Yeah. So with 50,000 square meters of warehousing space, is it fair to say you're now the largest warehouse in the country?
Yeah, no, in terms of Class A warehouses, yes, absolutely.
Class A warehouses?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay. Oh, well done. I'm very, very excited for you.
Yeah, no, we're pleased.
Yeah, so there you go. You've seen it's not just about the dream. They've actually gone ahead, put together the projects. One project, 50,000 square meters of space is already done, completed, let up to 75%. And they are now on to the second project with 8,000 square meters of space coming up in October later this year. So stay tuned in. We'll be going into the monies discussion shortly. Thank you for watching.